Wait a minute. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I knew I was in trouble. Uh, and it's just the simplest thing. I'm trying to adjust the position of my mouse here on the table so I can like move things all around and stuff. And so I move it from say 10 o'clock to about 11:30. If you're looking at it like so, 10 o'clock to about 11:30, and have it here in front of me. And so it's like, all right, what am I doing? Can I swing this? Can I swing? And so of course I forget to make sure that for those of you watching on the video side of things that I didn't click off of that in time. And so that's why you saw that off the top instead of me. Hi, Thursday Thoughts here at Soccer Down Here, Soccer's morning show. John, hear you there. And there's a couple of things to get into this morning. Obviously, we'll start with Stupidity down here because we've been promoting it this morning. A couple of different rounds of Stupidity. Then we have a lot of stuff. We have news yesterday that we're catching up on out of the Premier League with the results there. Manchester City takes it on the chin again, and you get to see what Unai Emery is able to do at Aston Villa. And so we got that. We've got stuff at the bottom of the table as well with the results there. We've got, let's see, what else do we have? Stuff with LAFC and their fans. You've got, let's see, stuff with the Lionesses and Pochettino and relegations and all this kind of stuff. Niko Moreno joining us at 10:30 as he always does. And we'll go over anything and everything in Niko's mind as we get ready for MLS Cup coming up this weekend. We'll go backward, talk about the semis, talk about Seattle, talk about their contract situation. Stefan Fry signed the deal yesterday. There's also been some movement in and around the league with players. We'll get into that as well. And that'll once again lead to Niko at 10:30 and get you into all of the other stuff that's going on today. We'll let you know what to watch, where to watch it, and all the gossip, rumor, and innuendo as well. So that's the rundown for the morning. Quick reminder, I don't know if you saw it yesterday on the 280 character app, but we did post that the Atlanta is American soccer scarf with the Vic Crow quote from 1968. It's up and running. We'll repost it again in case you missed it. But once again, 25 plus 5 unless the Abstermobile is going to take care of shipping for you. Once again, we're reissuing the scarf for the holidays as part of a two-step process to help out our friends at the Marshall Islands because they want to do some stuff here domestically in 2024. And so we're trying to help them out here on this side of the planet come next year. So that's step one of a process. Step two coming up in short order. And so that's round one reminder. Round two reminder is programming tomorrow is going to be a little backward because of the high school football championships. I have to be at Mercedes-Benz during this particular time slot. So we'll release Prim and Proper on tape in the morning, and then we'll have an SDH in the afternoon to get you ready for the weekend. So our friends at Beyond Goals will get another Friday off, and so we'll take care of all of that, but we'll get you ready for the weekend. So Prim and Proper in the morning, SDH PM will get you ready for the weekend. We'll talk about news of the day. Stuff should have calmed down in Europe with matchups and things like that, and so we'll talk about that coming up, obviously, tomorrow. But remember, so Prim and Proper early, SDH in the afternoon tomorrow. So Maddie and Drew will get their venting out of the way, and we will have Prim and Proper as your morning release and get you ready for the weekend with an SDH PM. All right. All right. So it's that time. Opening kickoff, once again, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. There's your QR code for those of you who are on the video portion watching the program, whether it's on our YouTube channel, on the Twitch pitch, or on the 280 character app. Don't forget to use the code Soccer Down Here 15. They in turn take 15% off your purchase, and in turn take 10% reinvested into the youth initiatives. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. You've probably seen the quote, Joey Barton's being a Neanderthal. And we'll go over what Joey said, and we will refute it fairly quickly, but unfortunately it is not the only part of Stupidity down here this morning. Yesterday, on Twitter at Joey7Barton. At Joey7Barton on the Twitters. So he says, and he decided to add to it this morning. Yesterday, and I'm trying to find the particular quote because he's been lit up as he should have been yesterday about the whole thing. And it's been a series of things, and so of course, Barton, who is the kind of guy that wants to sit there and talk about the women's. It talks about, all right. So literally, 15 hours ago. So that would be 15 hours ago. Our time would be midnight. So like when he woke up yesterday morning or something like that, or add 5 hours or whatever. Joey Barton said this: women shouldn't be talking with any kind of authority in the men's game. Come on, let's be serious. It's a completely different game. If you don't accept that, we will always see things differently. The women's game is thriving. Fantastic to see. I cannot take a thing they say serious in the men's arena. #namaste. And we'll go through the timeline and expose him for being the thinker that he is. Traditionally, you can't let this stuff get to you. And Ricky, we will be talking about Villa. You can't let this stuff get to you, no matter how out of touch individuals are. But when you have on the 280 character app over 2 million followers, something has to be said. And for Joey Barton to completely and discount individuals who are very, very good at their job, who happen to be discussing a sport that they played and can talk about it either on radio or television or both, or on this show. We got to stand up and say something. And I thought about it yesterday when this came out. Do we address it? And when you have someone who has a megaphone to over 2 million people, the answer is yes. So this will be somewhat in a letter to Joey, but it will be more in a generic sense as well. We all know individuals here on this side of the Atlantic that are very, very good at what they do. One of them in particular lives here, has been on this show, is a part of the SDH family, and works in Charlotte, and works on Sirius XMFC, and has done stuff overseas. But apparently, if Joey Barton was to have his way, someone like Jessica Charman would have no business talking about the men's game. That kind of behavior, that kind of thought pattern has to stop. I can guarantee you that as a part of the 2.3 million followers on the 280 character app, there are a lot of them, I'm fairly certain, that share his opinion. It is out of debt. It is out of date. It is out of touch. It is Neanderthal, and it holds the game back on the whole. There are tremendously talented people who talk about this sport. What it says on the driver's license should not matter. They've played the game. They understand the game. They're authority figures for a reason. And rightfully so. Joey Barton has been gunned on social media about it. He absolutely should be gunned on this. He hasn't changed his opinion, mind you. He continued, any man who listens to women commentary or co-coms need their heads testing. Hashtag stick to your own game. Fine, I'll get my head tested. Some of the most intelligent folks who discuss the game today happen to be women who cross over and talk about the men's game. When you have stuff like this, you have to combat it. You legitimately do. Stand by everything I've said on women commenting and co-coms on the men's football, like me talking about knitting or netball, way out of my comfort zone. Some of the men are bad enough. We've gone too far. You cannot watch a game now without hearing the nonsense. Any man who says otherwise is an absolute fart parcel. Fine, I'm an absolute fart parcel. I give Joey credit for his expansion of my language. I didn't know that farts came in parcels. Legitimately, I didn't. Maybe they come in various sizes of parcel. I don't know. I will gladly take and put on my resume that I'm an absolute fart parcel than listen to you the next time that you are on co-coms because you're not managing anymore and a network picks you up. What credence should I give you, comma, Joey Barton, comma, because you've been fired from gigs? You shouldn't be able to talk about managers then because you've been employed as them but no longer have been at times. Every single time you get hired for a gig and then you get dismissed, that to me means, if we take this logic train and move it forward, that you talking about other managers makes you an absolute fart parcel. Once again, by your thought pattern. You talking about other managers puts you in the fart parcel bin with the rest of us. If I like listening to informed opinions and they happen to be women talking about the men's game, then why should I listen to you if you were an unemployed manager when you want to criticize other managers? And like I said, and this was this morning. Absolutely this morning. So Joey was fired up, 10 o'clock this morning. The women's game's absolutely thriving. Great to see. It's a fantastic sport in its own right. See, then this is where he sets up the qualifiers. Every single time he's done something like this and has had to go full 280 characters or go for a couple of pages, he'll set up a qualifier. Really entertaining, good to watch. Technically and tactically, not that much difference. Physically, complete different planet. Until you've experienced that, you cannot say what you would have done in said position at no time, no. It's got a great England team that wins stuff. It's got its own Premier League. It's got its own Champions League. Please, for the love of God, go and commentate on that. You can say what you want. You'll be qualified to. You have actual experience of what is taking place. And the eunuchs might not agree, but somebody had to say something. Hate it having to be me. Actually, dude, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. And then he goes off on some tangent about what other folks say. So that's Joey Barton for you this morning. I probably spent a lot more time. I probably spent too much time. I probably spent too much time on what he does and what he said. And he continues, and it's just not worth my time. But in a situation like this, when you have someone who has over 2 million characters, I think we got to say something. Legitimately. Because if you let this kind of behavior go unfettered, then people think that it's either acceptable, or okay to say things like that if you have no basis in fact and just want to vent or what have you. But for Joey Barton to say what he said, it's ill-informed, it's antiquated, it's out of touch, and needs to be stopped. That's stage one of opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. There is more stupidity. We'll get into it in a second. But I feel like I had to take a break here. There's your QR code for those of you watching on the 280-character app, on Twitch, and on the YouTube channel here for Soccer Down Here. Use the code SoccerDownHere15. They take 15% off of your purchase. They, in turn, take 10% reinvested into the youth game and youth initiatives. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Joey Barton's out of touch. Needs to be stopped. Anyone who thinks like that needs to be stopped. Because if we don't talk about it, once again, it comes across as accepted behavior, which it's not. You don't like to sit here and give anything like that credence, give it the time of day. But in a situation like that, when we know better on this show, when we know better here on this network, when we have folks who know the game backward and forward, for Joey Barton to say trash like that, and that's what it is. It's 280-character trash. And to continue to draw traffic to his own particular profile, then it's got to be addressed. So, Joey Barton, yeah, you're out of touch. Not a surprise that you're out of touch, but you're out of touch. And so, everybody who's in this morning, and Tom, we're glad that you're on the road to recovery, by the way. Hutch, last time I heard a statement like that was from one of my rugby teammates commenting about women's rugby. They should stay at home and prepare the cheese and tomato sandwiches. And that was in the late 70s. David, does this mean men can't comment on the women's game? If so, I might take that to get Alexi and Taylor off the WNT coverage. It may, David, it may. Joey Barton wouldn't want to, I think, first and foremost. And so I think that's part of the shtick. And yes, at the end of the day, this fella is just a no-talent ass clown. I would tend to agree. Circle gets the square. Tom. And are the games really that different? The athletes may be different, but is the game really that different? You're telling me it's impossible for a woman to discuss a double pivot because she may not be as fast and strong as a male player? It's just dumb. Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. But once again, Joey Barton has never been one to shy away from a public opinion, antiquated or not. And so that's where we are with Joey Barton. The other piece of stupidity down here comes from our old buddy Luis Rubiales. And it's come across in a couple of different publications. Paul McInnes at The Guardian, Lawrence Ostler at The Independent. Apparently, we were talking about Luis Rubiales and Jenny Hermoso and how much trouble that got Rubiales into, despite his denials and repeated denials and all that kind of stuff. According to Paul McInnes at The Guardian et al., Rubiales kissed Lucy Bronze seemingly forcefully and cupped the face of her England teammate Laura Coombs after the Women's World Cup final in August, according to the chair of the FA. Claims were made in a submission by Debbie Hewitt to a FIFA disciplinary committee investigating Rubiales' behavior after the World Cup. In response, Rubiales accused Hewitt of, quote, absolutely disgusting behavior and suggesting he is some form of creep. The committee ultimately suspended Rubiales, you'll remember, from football activity for 3 years. Claims emerged after the committee published the written reasons for banning Rubiales. Former president of the Spanish Fed became the object of international opprobrium. That's a word to use. You know that's coming from overseas when they use the word opprobrium. Seen celebrating, and we got into the Jenny Hermoso bit. Hewitt and the president of New Zealand football, Joanna Wood, wrote submissions to the disciplinary committee after they'd witnessed Rubiales' behavior and wanted to give, quote, firsthand observations on impact, end quote. Hewitt describes a series of inappropriate actions involving Rubiales and substantiates Hermoso's version of events in what the committee describes as, quote, the kiss incident, end quote. Hewitt writes, Hermoso was not the only person subject to inappropriate attentions. According to the committee's account of her submission, Hewitt observed Rubiales' behavior while standing next to him in the medal presentation line. And we'll have to go back and get the video on this. He shook the hand of every England player, touched a few on the arm as they walked past, but then cupped and stroked, in quotation marks, the face of the player Laura Coombs, which Hewitt thought was slightly odd, and then he seemingly forcefully kissed the English player Lucy Bronze on her face. In his response to the submission, Rubiales said it was, quote, astonishing to read the amount of prejudice that Ms. Hewitt showed. Claimed Hewitt had hugged several players, even after clearly noticing that they were extending their hands to receive a handshake. The hypocrisy is blatant, Rubiales said, adding the way she presents a gentle gesture of comfort to all the rivals, suggesting that he is some sort of creep, is absolutely disgusting. Rubiales said he had stroked Coombs' face in an attempt to comfort her, as, quote, Ms. Coombs was injured during the final, had to receive stitches, and was wearing a bandage in her head, end quote. Unused sub in the final, Rubiales also accused Hewitt of blatantly lying in her account of the kiss involving Hermoso. We'll get into the LAFC stuff next. I know that you guys are talking about it. We'll get into it. 35-page document published by the disciplinary committee paints a picture of events in the final, the aftermath, and Rubiales' behavior throughout. Committee notes that Rubiales is yet to apologize to Hermoso, continues to insist that the player had given consent, even though, quote, the kiss could not be seen as having been consensual from the perspective of a reasonable and objective observer, end quote. So Luis Rubiales continues to sit there, and once again, we talk about being out of date, out of touch, being a Neanderthal. There you go. LAFC, I know that you guys were getting that discussed in the timeline, and that came out yesterday. No recovery necessary, Tom. Literally on the way to the orthopedic doctor right now to discuss results of the MRI. Sure, I'm going to be told I need surgery, but maybe not. Fingers crossed. Yes. Rubiales, Ricky. If he thinks that's okay, I'm sure there's Joey Barton, I think. If he thinks that's okay, I'm sure there's more things he thinks women shouldn't do, and then we've gone down the slippery slope 50 to 100 years backwards. Yes, true. Now, you guys wanted to get into LAFC, and Kevin Baxter over at the LA Times got into this yesterday, and apparently, Kevin Baxter came out with an article. Major League Soccer has fined LAFC and suspended the supporters group 3250 due to misconduct allegations. Say that 10 times fast. Suspends supporters group 3252 due to misconduct allegations. And once again, when you have more than one writer on a story, you know what's going on. LAFC has been fined $100,000, and 3252's privileges have been suspended pending an investigation by Major League Soccer due to allegations of serious misconduct. That was announced last night. So you end up with that news. There has been a probe into the supporters union, including, and for its serious, okay, so here it is. MLS fines LAFC $100,000. Launched a probe into the 3252 for serious misconduct, including the lighting of flares prior to the match against Houston December 2nd. The 3252 will have all supporter privileges suspended pending completion of the probe. And there's a picture of Chiellini as their headliner. That he is basically walking into all of that smoke and fire and flame and all of that stuff. You barely could see Giorgio Chiellini, and if you remember what went down with the beginning of the match, and you could barely see what was going on. Barely could see it. Supporter groups set off flares not authorized by Major League Soccer during the Western Conference Final, creating so much smoke it delayed the match. 3252. Supporter privileges for attending MLS Cup will be restricted. Fans could face other sanctions next season after the league completes the investigation. Quote, this is from Major League Soccer. In coordination with Major League Soccer, LAFC agrees to conduct a full investigation of the incident. Violators will be subject to further penalties, indefinite bans, including MLS Cup, and all appropriate legal action. The comprehensive review will focus on improving security and supporter management processes for 2024 and beyond. You might remember Ileana Limon. She's now Ileana Limon Romero from the Orlando Sentinel. She is now out with the LA Times and wrote that piece with Kevin Baxter. So basically what's going on here is that LAFC, I want to know, and this is something, and like I said, I'm really incredibly naive, and I'm an old FUD. So, I mean, for me, it's trying to figure out how things happen. How do you smuggle flares? How do you smuggle flares into a match? How do you smuggle flares into a stadium? I mean, legitimately, that's something that is something that I would try to figure. It's like, how do you do this? How do you do this? How would you smuggle that stuff into the stadium? And I mean, those of you who are probably far more advanced in these kinds of things, as you're far better at that than I am. How do you smuggle flares inside a stadium? And then try to figure out how to light them and all that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, and you would, and I know that folks don't sit there and they go, okay, well, it's a little thick out here right now, kind of overcast, marine layers in, a little foggy, a little wet. When you were lighting those flares, you might have the smoke that you had that would just sit there for a while. But yeah. Kepsi. Kepsi is a professional hoodlum. I have no idea. Kepsi admits to being a professional hoodlum. But yeah, and I know that you're more focused on lighting the flare and having the spectacle as opposed to looking at the weather conditions and going, maybe I shouldn't light this because the smoke will just hover. And that's what happened. 3252 lights all these flares. The smoke hangs over BMO. They have to delay the start of the match because of it. They have to let the smoke dissipate. And now the 3252 have had their activities suspended. LAFC has been fined 6 figures. And now they've got to figure out how to investigate this. How do we investigate this? Supporter privileges for the 3252 are restricted, facing other sanctions next season. I don't see, and once again, we get into this. And Kepsi says, practically speaking, they'd have plenty of places to put things, but security wouldn't detect it with machines, and they'd have to pat down, I guess. I mean, that sounds about right. But how do you, in a situation like this, enforce someone being from the 3252? legitimately. How do you do that? You sit there and it's like, okay, I need your ID. And instead of giving your California driver's license, you actually give your 3252 card? Is it a picture ID? How do you plan on enforcement? Is LAFC going to go to 3252 and sit there and say, we need a member list? And we'll cross-reference it with our season ticket holders? Ask for picture IDs when you go walking in the door? How do you plan on restricting what they do? No noisemakers? Do the bass drums and all of the noisemakers that they bring in, are they not allowed in next season? How are you going to enforce this in Columbus? Like I said, I'm asking these open-ended questions because I have no idea. I have no idea how you enforce this. I mean, seriously, if somebody's a fan of LAFC, they could just go in wearing whatever they want. They could wear a polo and a pair of jeans for temps in the 60s with a rain jacket. Maybe have an LAFC coat on. And unless you have an ID card or a T-shirt that says I'm 3252 and proud of it, then you go walking in the door at lower.com in downtown Columbus, Ohio, and someone in security is going to sit there and say, "Oh, you're wearing a 3252 shirt. Your activities are restricted." I mean, seriously, how are you going to enforce this, A, this weekend, and B, the beginning of next year? And LAFC has been fined, and they're supposed to have an investigation into this. Okay, who of you brought the flares? Literally, this is like being when we were in elementary school. You have the assembly, and the principal is sitting there, and he's wagging his finger at all of you, going, okay, which one of you did this? I need all of you to stand on this line. And the person who did this, step forward. Everybody takes a half step back except for one guy who's not thinking fast enough. Ah, so you did it, but no. And then you look behind you and you see everybody else is taking a half step back. Seriously, how do you enforce this? I'd love to know. Like I said, I'd love to know how you're going to enforce this on short notice. You are 2 days away from MLS Cup. The supporters can go in plain clothes. I mean, they could wear Cincinnati gear. Or they could wear whomever. Or they could wear LA Aztec stuff. They could wear LA, well, no, they wouldn't wear LAG stuff. They could wear LA Aztec stuff. They could wear California surf stuff. They could wear crew stuff if they wanted and then take it off the second they get in the building. How are they going to enforce the restrictions for 3252? Here's my membership card. I mean, seriously, how are you going to enforce this on 2 days' notice and separate the 3252 away from LAFC fans and away from Columbus fans? And then this investigation that you're planning, I mean, obviously the 3252 will step up and sit there and say, okay, yeah, we're sorry. We didn't realize the repercussions of having a flare in marine layer. We didn't understand the meteorological effect, and it was going to hover over the stadium. We figured it was going to be a cool visual. It was going to pop up into the air, and we'd be done with it. You need Dallas Reigns or Brianna Ruffalo or, I was about to say Dr. George, but dear rest Dr. George. But yeah, you need Dallas Reigns or Brianna Ruffalo to sit there and tell you whether or not you should be able to do that kind of stuff. By the way, there are 2 meteorologists for the ABC affiliate in Los Angeles. Have them there, sit there and say, nope, you don't want to do that. Or do it as a weather report leading into a match. For those of you who are the 3252, and if you're planning on anything flares, don't do it because it'll hover over the stadium. You get that kind of meteorological impact. Like I said, I don't know how Major League Soccer is going to reinforce this or just enforce it from a perspective of legality. Everybody walk in the door in Columbus. Here's my driver's license. Here's my 3252 membership card. You go walking up. Can I see your ID, please? Show your driver's license. Are you a member of 3252? Nope. Okay, come on in. I'd love to know how they plan on enforcing this. I really would. That's just me. Okay. So that happened yesterday in Major League Soccer. Other news in MLS since we're here. You've had some signings and some folks who are they're kind of wandering around and figuring out what's going on. Big news out of Orlando City yesterday. Orlando City and club captain Mauricio Pereira have agreed on a mutual contract termination. Don't know the why. Pereira says, quote, "I'll miss you. I wish nothing but the best for you. I love you and thank you, Luis Muzzi." Mauricio has embodied Orlando City since the moment he arrived at the club. More on that in a bit. Also on the board, Charlotte. We talked about Charlotte yesterday. Dean Smith and Frank Lampard apparently were part of the group that were finalists in discussing the gig. Another head coach finalist to add, according to sources, Sounders assistant Freddie Juarez. And we can catch up with Niko at 10:30 and ask Niko about this. Juarez is at the final stage with Lampard, Smith et al. Previously the head coach at RSL before joining Seattle staff. So we'll have to bookmark Freddie Juarez and discuss that when Niko shows up at 10:30. Hassan Ndam, former center back for Red Bulls, looks like he might be joining a club in Finland. 15 apps this past year for Red Bulls. So there is some player movement that is going on right now. Also, according to Tommy Scoops, now the Revs are fully focused on their coaching search after they've gotten rid of the baloney and they named Kurt Onalfo sporting director. Gio Savarese, Caleb Porter, Robin Fraser, Dom Kinnear, Bob Bradley. Tom Quinlan of WPRO first reported the consideration of Porter. Seth McComber, Blazing Musket, first reported Bradley, Fraser, and Kinnear. But once again, you wonder, for the same question that we had yesterday with Charlotte, with everything that went on with that front office this past year, where are you if you are the head coach when it comes to creative control, the pecking order for getting players, these kinds of things? Hey, I'd like this guy. Is it going to be a collaborative process? Because if you look at those names, Gio Savarese to me is a guy that doesn't suffer fools. And it seems like there would be some elevated vocal conversations between Savarese and Kurt Onalfo when it came to bringing in players. Caleb Porter might be the same way. Caleb Porter also, though, might be interested in being employed in Major League Soccer. Robin Fraser, do you look at the situation in Colorado with Robin Fraser not really having a whole lot of money to deal with, not a whole lot to play with, how he did there and how he would do with a budget. How much different is his budget going to be commensurate if he was to be the head coach of the Revs? What's his idea about bringing them forward? Dom Kinnear, currently an assistant on the Cincinnati staff, won 2 MLS Cups with Houston, but that was back in 2006 and 2007. Dominic Kinnear, to me, would be a safe play, but where is Dominic Kinnear when it comes to, modern day coaches? Is he happy just being a two? Is he just, is he interviewing just for the sake of interviewing? And then Bob Bradley. Bradley, for me, would want full control. He would want full control of the situation. He would be like, well, I need to be in charge of player personnel decisions. I need to be in charge of a lot of these things that Kurt Onalfo, I would imagine, is like, no, I'm in control of that stuff now. Would Bob Bradley be happy with just being employed? I would think the answer to that would be no. So Gio Savarese, while an incredibly talented coach, I think would want some say in player personnel decisions, and there might be a clash of styles with him and Curt Onalfo. Caleb Porter, Robin Frazier. I mean, remember, Robin Frazier won the first place in Western Conference back in 21 before the awful start in 22. Dom Kinnear, once again, he hasn't been a head coach in a while. Bob Bradley, I think, would want more control. To me, that's like, and I'll bring in another New England name here. Be like Bill Parcells. Parcells, to me, would want player personnel. He wants to be the GM and the head coach. So he wants to have player personnel decisions, and he wants to be the head coach. That, to me, is what Bob Bradley would want. I don't know if Bob Bradley would be happy just coaching, because he wants to put his own stamp on all of this. So that, for me, would be the concern about Bob Bradley. If Bob Bradley was interested in coming back, because remember, he went to stay back in Norway. He had 11 games to keep them up and keep them away from being relegated. Didn't happen. Revs roster, remember, they signed one of the biggest no-brainers in the history of Earth, signing Tomas Shankalai. They triggered that purchase option. They should have triggered that the second he walked in the door, but they triggered the purchase option. So Shankalai is there. Carlos Heel, Shankalai, Dylan Barrero, and Dylan Barrero is coming off an injury. Reminder once again, Seattle, and this is something else we'll talk to Niko about, chasing after Lanús number 10s, which I thought was something that Atlanta was supposed to. I thought Atlanta had the market on Lanús number 10s. Pedro de la Vega, the current Lanús number 10. Sounders have been working on a deal. If he signs, because he's 22, he'd be a young DP, and he'd hit the cap at only $200,000 as opposed to the $650 being a DP. That means that clubs are also permitted to use all three U22 initiative spots. 6 and 7 and 40 appearances in all comps for Lanús this season. He was part of the 2019 U20 for Argentina. So we'll catch up with him about De La Vega. We mentioned Bedoya and Wagner yesterday and what the latest is with them and what possibly could be returns in Philly. Do we get returns? Do players walk away? That's the other part of all of this discussion. So that's some of the news out of Major League Soccer. But once again, I mean, legitimately, I'm going to be dialing back to the idea of the 32-52. 32-52. How do you plan on locking that down? I'd love to know how you're going to lock that down. Yesterday in the Prem, I know we're kind of bouncing around here a little bit. Yesterday in the Premier League, it was kind of wild, and we had a bunch of different storylines. Once again, there's action here in a 3-match week. So once again, keep an eye on your fantasy teams. Keep an eye on your fantasy teams. I thought I did, thinking I was going to start Erling Haaland and Julian Alvarez and be okay. I was not. Brighton and Brentford, a 2-1 win for Brighton at the Amex. Bournemouth, we'll have news on them and on their opponent, beating Crystal Palace 2-0 yesterday at Selhurst Park. News on a couple of different fronts there at Crystal Palace. Fulham put 5 on Nottingham Forest. News out of Forest. Liverpool 2-0 over Sheffield United. The Chris Wilder era did not start as Sheffield United fans would have planned. Remember, that number was like plus 1250 or something to win. Villa over Manchester City, the big surprise yesterday. Villa with a 1-0 win at Villa Park. The winless run for Manchester City is now at 3. Manchester United beat Chelsea 2-1. And that was at Old Trafford. So today, 2 matches, one at 2:30 at Goodison Park, Newcastle and Everton. Spurs hosting West Ham at 3:15. at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. How does Spurs not have a sponsor yet? How do they not have a sponsor for that stadium? I mean, legitimately, that's just, how do they not have a sponsor? I know that when they were, you build a stadium and then you have COVID, but how do you not have a sponsor yet? Michael, you're absolutely correct. Chelsea is proof you can spend ish loads of money and still look like ish. You smell like ish, too. We got some Pochettino news coming up also. But what that means with the results from yesterday, Arsenal is 36 points, 2 points clear of Liverpool. Villa's at 32. They're in third. Manchester City is in fourth. 3 draws in a row. They were unbeaten in their last 5. That streak is snapped. They're at 9-3-3, 30 points. Spurs are in fifth right now at 27. They also have a match in hand. So if they were to win today, they would be at 30 points. They'd still be in fifth because of goal difference with Manchester City. Manchester United in the barn at 27 points. Newcastle at 26. Brighton at 25. So that's like Group A that we've got. We've got Group A and like Group A minus. West Ham is in ninth at 21. Chelsea's at 19. They're only ahead of Brentford in the table because of goals scored. Chelsea at 5-4-6, same goal difference as Brentford, both at 19 points. 3 goals scored more than Brentford. They have to go to the second tiebreaker to currently be in 10th. Fulham's at 18 points, identical record to Wolves, 1 more goal scored. So once again, the second tiebreaker for Wolves and Fulham. Fulham, because of what they were able to do yesterday, they're now 12th instead of 13th. Crystal Palace at 16 points. They're ahead of Bournemouth on goal difference. Nottingham Forest at 13 points at 3-4-8. Luton, and this is group number 3. Luton, 9 points, 2 wins. And Everton, once again, because of the point penalty, they're at 7 points ahead of Burnley on goal difference. Sheffield United's only won once in their first 15. So that gets us into today and the news of what is going on after yesterday, etc. We mentioned Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, and this kind of has the tie-in to Nottingham Forest. How pissed off are folks at Crystal Palace? An object was thrown in the direction of Roy Hodgson as he walked to the tunnel after the final whistle. Senesi scored in the 25th, Moore scored at 90+1 to make it 2-0 for the Cherries. The object may have been a hand warmer, like one of those hand packets that we shake and we put in our pocket. Former England manager wasn't struck by it, but according to our friends at the Telegraph, Ivan Speck was at Selhurst Park. Encapsulated the growing discontent in South London. Mass exodus after the Kiefer Moore header added to a similar goal from Marcus Senesi in the first half. Asked about the object being thrown at him, Hodgson said, "That's news to me, so you're telling me there's a fan out there who doesn't like me? Oh, well, that'll definitely stop me sleeping." Hashtag sarcasm font. It was a very sad evening for us. Tonight was not the performance that the Crystal Palace fans or that we wanted to see. The fans are who we play for at the moment. We're producing some lean fare for them. See, that's definitely a way to phrase it. I learn more about how to phrase things by reading the press conference transcriptions and things like that. We're producing some lean fare for them. Or as Michael said, you're looking like ish. I think the fans who left after the header at 90+1 are probably sitting there saying, yeah, Crystal Palace looks like ish. We're trying to change it around. Hodgson continued. Fans have been spoiled here in recent times. The fact is that the expectations are high, hence the boos. But the fact is, fans have been spoilt here in recent times. They're used to seeing us do very well at home, get good results this year, and we've not been able to do that. 4 of their last 7. Bournemouth's won 4 of their last 7, moving level on points with Palace. Then they broke down the match in and of itself. But if there is growing discontent with Roy Hodgson at Crystal Palace, it might be the second that Steve Cooper is let go at Nottingham Forest, that Crystal Palace would swoop in and grab Steve Cooper in a heartbeat. Nottingham Forest got whacked yesterday, 5-0 by Fulham. Their owner was so mad. He was so mad, Evangelos Marinakis. It is rumored that he threw away his credential. Because, you know, owners, when they want to go to a visiting joint, they'll get they'll get their own credential, and you have to wear it around your neck. And so someone around Craven Cottage actually found Marinakis' credential, and a picture was taken on social media. So literally, that's how mad Evangelos Marinakis was after the 5-0 loss. But what folks didn't know is that leading into that game, Marinakis was really pissed going in, and he was pissed coming out. On Tuesday, he had fired the manager at Olympiacos, another team that Marinakis owns. He fired Diego Martinez on Tuesday. So he fires a guy on Tuesday, despite Olympiacos being third in the Greek league. After they go down 4-0 in the 73rd minute, Jimenez and Iwobi had each had braces at that point. They would score in the 86th. After that fourth goal with 25 minutes to go, Marinakis had seen enough. He leaves his box and apparently tosses his credential into the bushes. There's a picture of it on in the Telegraph article where someone has apparently found Evangelos Marinakis' credential from the matchup against Fulham. Literally, it was in the bushes. And so, of course, picture taken, shows up in the Telegraph. Threw his accreditation lanyard into a nearby bush. He got a lot of access. External area, stadium access. He didn't get access to the media or the hospitality area, though, or the tower. But he did get access to the tunnel, pitch side, and forecourt. 5 of the 8 places Marinakis could go. But he was so mad, he took his accreditation and threw it in the bushes. Cooper and his players, and I gave Steve Cooper a boatload of credit. Steve Cooper and his players, after the match was over, actually went over to the supporters section. They faced the fans. Steve Cooper held up his hands and apologized. There's this picture of him going like this. You know, it's like, it's on me, I apologize. But the fans still would chant Steve Cooper's name to show how he is adored there at Nottingham Forest for keeping them up last season. And remember, I think they're even with the same number of wins that they were at last year at this point. Yes, they're having a bad patch right now, but Evangelos Marinakis, the owner, has never been one to be patient. He was patient with him last year, gave him a contract extension. And so you're going through that same kind of growing pain this year, trying to find a striker because Brennan Johnson has moved on, and you got to find a striker. Who's taking over? You got to put the ball in the back of the net. Ain't nobody helping you right now. Right now, Forest has scored 16 goals in 15 matches. That puts them dangerously close to Manchester United. But 16 goals, they have Luton, who has scored the same. Crystal Palace has scored 14. Everton and Burnley have scored 15. Sheffield United has scored 11. So they are tied for 15th in goals scored. And then, they're middle of the pack when it comes to goals allowed, but they just haven't been able to put the ball in the back of the net. You're 15th. You're tied for 15th in the Premier League in goals scored. You need to find some help, or you need to find somebody who's going to step up to do it. Cooper, after the match, says it was embarrassing getting that response because I don't deserve it. Should have gotten a different reception where you have folks at Crystal Palace throwing things at Roy Hodgson, allegedly, maybe a hot hands packet. Steve Cooper, for what he's been able to do at Nottingham Forest, he gets cheered and adored. I don't know if cheered's the right word, but he gets the adoration and applause for what he's been able to do there at Nottingham Forest. All the turnover they had last year, all of the roster change that they had last year, and Steve Cooper kept them afloat. This season, you're going through the same problems. You need a striker. And right now, you're toward the bottom of the table. You're still away from that third group by about 4 points, but still, you're in that group. I don't want anyone else, this is Cooper yesterday, I don't want anyone else to be talked about apart from me. I take responsibility for this. It's all on me. I totally understand all the questions about my future, but it's something I genuinely think about the least. That said, I believe I'm the man to turn it around. I don't think about my future or my reputation. What's good for the club is good for me. That's all I care about. It was a painful night, and we deserved the scoreline. We completely came away with the required tactical and technical levels. If you don't have enough desire to defend, if you don't have the will, if you lose races, if you pull out of tackles and end up on the floor when it's 50-50, you'll get a night like tonight. I just hope it was an outlier. So, Steve Cooper has laid down the gauntlet, but will he be there to continue what's going on? Probably not, knowing the level of patience that Evangelinas Marinakis has. So, discontent at Crystal Palace, probably getting rid of Roy Hodgson if this continues. Discontent from the owner at Nottingham Forest, he'll probably get rid of Steve Cooper in short order, knowing his level of patience, parenthesis, lacking in it, close parentheses. Don't be surprised if A plus B equals C. If Cooper gets dismissed, if Hodgson gets dismissed, then Steve Parrish and Crystal Palace picks up Steve Cooper. So we'll find out what happens there with that. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Premier League. We mentioned, and Michael Head, since you mentioned Chelsea, this was interesting. I thought that this was interesting about Chelsea and Mauricio Pochettino. Mauricio Pochettino forced the Chelsea players to watch all of the discipline problems on tape. He sat them in a room, had them watch the tape. 47 yellows and 3 reds. So they're averaging, 3 yellow cards a match? And they've had 3 reds this year. Pochettino's been forcing his players to sit through replays of them getting on the wrong side of referees to stop the disciplinary problems. Conor Gallagher, remember he got sent off, could have cost them in the 3-2 over Brighton, but he won't be available for Manchester. He wasn't available for Manchester United. Reece James was sent off against Newcastle. Sterling and Enzo Fernandez are now 1 booking away from a suspension for accumulating 5 yellows. So he had them all sit down and watch all of it. Watch this, watch this, watch this. And you wonder if that will kind of cool things down a little bit. You wonder. And I don't know if you were paying attention to what was going on with the Euros. The Lionesses will not be, with the Olympics. The Lionesses will not be going to the Olympics. Had a 6-0 win over Scotland, but they lost out on points. And tiebreakers. 6-0 win. 2 late Netherlands goals. Missed out on topping the group on goal difference. So no England in the Olympics on the women's side. That was a bit of a shocker as well. Gossip, rumor, and innuendo. There's a Hillsborough story I want to get into in a little bit, and we'll get into it. But, we'll get into that in a bit. But gossip, rumor, and innuendo. Once again, Niko Moreno coming up bottom of the hour. And we'll go over everything Major League Soccer. So, who's going where? Who could maybe not? All right. Our long national nightmare might be over. Real Madrid are ready to offer Kylian Mbappe the deal. But he's got to have an answer by January 15th. So you've got 5 weeks. If I'm in Mbappe's camp, you're telling me I've got 5 weeks? You're telling me that? So you're telling me, let me get this straight. So you're telling me that I only have 5 weeks to tell you whether I've got yes or no? I don't know. That's interesting. Got to line up your finances, I guess. Richarlison is a target for the Saudi Pro League. Spurs unlikely to sell for less than $60 million, which is what they paid Everton for him. Spurs are also considering signing Ben Godfrey in January from Everton. Tom, Ropes, et al., what do you think? Juve set to pull out of a deal to sign Jadon Sancho. Forward Noni Madueke wants to leave Chelsea over a lack of playing time. Yesterday we mentioned about Frank Lampard and Dean Smith competing for the gig at Charlotte FC with Freddie Juarez. Newcastle's Tino Livramento, who qualifies to play for Scotland and Portugal, wants to prove he's good enough for England. Liverpool have made an approach for Benfica's 18-year-old Dutch forward Keanu Lorenzo Silva. West Ham will listen to offers for Spain midfielder Pablo Fornals in January, despite triggering the one-year extension to his contract. Remember, as we always say, you trigger a contract extension, you sign somebody to a long-term deal, it is to control the asset. It's not because you like the guy. Might be because you like the guy, but it's also to control the asset. You sign Mykhailo Mudryk to an 8-year deal, you're controlling the asset for 8 years. If he stays for the 8 years, fantastic. You got what you were looking for out of him. You might have broken even. But if somebody wants to come by and Mykhailo Mudryk is, going gangbusters, somebody wants to knock on your door, hey, Brook, can we get him from you? Then, once again, the player is stuck in the contract. The team can sit there and go, okay, yeah, sure, what's it worth to you? It's about controlling the asset. Always remember that. West Ham must pay more than £40 million if they want Inter Milan midfielder Hakan Çalhanoğlu. That's from Calcio Mercato. West Ham and Crystal Palace keen on a January move for PSG's forward Hugo Ekitike. Football Insider, 2-hour point about Steve Cooper. Once again, Football Insider wants to take the information as you wish. And this was yesterday before the match. Cooper expects to be sacked soon. Well-placed sources told Football Insider, and I like how they put themselves in boldface type, that Cooper has told friends he's aware of the whispers about his position, and it's been 1 win in 11. Cooper has previously twice come close to losing his job, September of 22 and in the spring of this year. Growing sense that his time is ending. Sources say the ex-Swansea boss has let it be known to his inner circle that he does not expect to be manager at Forest much longer. Under contract until June of 2025. Marinakis is eyeing a return on his investment this year, and Football Insider, in all caps and boldface, revealed on November 30 he's targeting a top 10 Premier League finish as pressure grows on Cooper. Newcastle has put a £25 million price tag on Jacob Murphy, by the way. So if say somebody's mad Evangelinas Marinakis. If Evangelinas Marinakis is that mad about what's going on, then you're looking for a top 10 finish. You ain't that far from top 10. You are 6 points out of top 10 right now. I think that speaks more to the league on the whole as we talk about groups A, B, and C. But, dude, you're 2 wins out of being in 10th. But Evangelinas Marinakis has not been one to exhibit a whole lot of patience. AC Milan are prepared to sign Arsenal's 23-year-old defender Jakub Kivior on loan with an obligation to buy. Arsenal are tracking USA and Hajduk split midfielder Rokas Pukstas. That's from the 3-letter paper. Take the information at your own peril. France keeper Mikey Magnan may not sign a new AC Milan deal because Manchester United are among the clubs showing an interest. Next time Nick pops in, we'll ask about that. City and United have made moves for Lille's 18-year-old French defender Lenny Yoro, who has a contract until 2025. So once again, Lille, smart business here. We have a young defender. He's under contract. Would you be interested in him? Okay, great, fine, cool. Here's the deal, though. You got to pay the man. We have a figure. We have a number in our head. What do you think that number is? Well, I'll tell you what that number is. It's probably a lot bigger than you think. So that's what you're looking at with stuff in the Prem. Liverpool have extended their partnership with Carlsberg for another 10 years. Started in 1992, by the way. Joining up together until 2034. So there's that. Interesting story out of France. QSI has sold a minority stake in PSG to U.S.-based private investment firm Arctos Partners. First thing to note, according to Peter Rutzler at The Athletic, 1/8 without any influence on on-field sporting matters. So it is a 1/8 interest in PSG, 12.5%. No change to the club hierarchy. PSG are now not solely owned by Qatar now, but QSI will retain full control over decisions at PSG. It's not an agreement with a view to eventually buying a minority stake, according to Rutzler. For Arctos, its key focus, furthering PSG's global growth. Lifestyle brand, popular outside the sport, all that. For the club, the arrival of Arctos will also provide financial support in women's sports development, and particularly PSG's other infrastructure investments and projects. They've recently opened the new 300 million euro training facility west of town, and they have plans either to renovate the Parc des Princes or, if necessary, relocate. PSG wants to own their own stadium outright. Obviously, you've got political stumbling blocks there, and so they're looking at a new site altogether or relocation to the Stade de France if they can't own the Parc des Princes. 12.5% stake that would value PSG at about €4.25 billion, or about 4.6 billion US dollars. So that came across this morning. Burnley winger Luka Kolyosho has been ruled out for an extended period because of a knee injury. Suffered it in a collision in the loss to Wolves. Steve Cooper, by the way, according to Paul Taylor at The Athletic, expects to be in charge at Wolves. Challenged his players to show fans what it means to them to play for the club at Molyneux. Virgil van Dijk says he's going to help Joel Matip in recovery from his ACL injury. Ruptured his ACL in last weekend's win over Fulham. Now will undergo surgery. Contract's expiring next summer, and the 32-year-old doesn't know what his future may hold. Chelsea women's defender Aniek Nguyen has sustained an ACL injury, and she is going to be out and was on international duty for the Netherlands U23s. Let me go to Sky and see if we missed anything when it came to the other gossip news and innuendo and rumors and papers and things like that. And we'll get into what to watch, where to watch it, and the other news going on. News about Paul Pogba coming up in just a sec. According to our friends at Sky, and once again, this is from the 4-letter paper, so take the information at your own peril. They're trying to line up Julian Lopetegui, meaning Forrest, sacking Steve Cooper, Julian Lopetegui, Marco Silva, among the individuals that could be figured out as the successor. Mirror, Spurs boss Ange Postecoglou has offered an update on James Maddison's recovery from the ankle injury he picked up last month, describing it as a slow burner. Kevin De Bruyne has been included in Manchester City's FIFA Club World Cup squad, raising hopes of a return sometime soon. Daily Telegraph, we mentioned Tino Livramento. We also mentioned Hugo Ekitike from the Evening Standard and The Athletic. Manchester United unlikely to make any signings. Morning, Abby. Shag Samiak at sundown for those celebrating the Festival of Lights. Absolutely. And thank you once again for subscribing. Manchester United unlikely to make any signings in the January transfer window, according to Erik ten Hag. So we'll see there. And Saarbrücken in the 3rd division of German football knocked out Bayern Munich in the previous round of the DFB Pokal. They beat Eintracht Frankfurt 2-0, so they've taken 2 rather large wins in the tournament. So good work by our friends at Saarbrücken as they continue to knock out folks there. Spurs have rejected a Swansea approach for Ange Postecoglou's number 2, Chris Davies. Dele Alli's feeling good, on course to make an Everton return in the new year. And so there's plenty of stuff going on right now when it comes to the activity in the game overseas. And we talked about Christine Sinclair yesterday and what she has been able to do. It's been amazing. The Hillsborough thing. This is what I wanted to get into about Hillsborough. David Kahn was around earlier this week. It was yesterday. And now, and full disclosure, I have donated to the Hillsborough Family Support Group. I have the scarf to prove it right there. And there have been some amazing programs about the cover-up from the police. Panorama on BBC did amazing work when it came to exposing everything that went on when it came to the Hillsborough tragedy. David Kahn says, given that the government took 6 years to respond to the 2017 report it commissioned from James Jones, the former Bishop of Liverpool, aimed at learning lessons from the Hillsborough scandal, the day of publication always likely to fall into the more recent series of letdowns rather than celebrations. Family members who gathered at a home office building near the Liverpool waterside to be told of the government's measures responded with the resolve that has formed the indomitable core of their 34-year cause, especially with Margaret Espinal, that has been a part and parcel to it. And Jared will be joining us here in a sec. Hillsborough law developed after the 2016 verdict. New inquest into how overcrowding and crush were caused at the stadium. Jury rejected the campaign of lies by the South Yorkshire police, who sought to blame the victims for the disaster rather than take responsibility for their own monumental failings. Hillsborough law proposals would introduce a legally enforceable positive duty of candor for police and all public authorities to assist investigations into a major incident, and equal public funding for legal representation of bereaved families at inquiries and inquests. Draft laws aimed at ensuring that other people do not suffer police cover-ups, disdain, appalling treatment as the Hillsborough families did, and they've relentlessly impressed on the government their commitment to this as a positive legacy from their nightmare struggle. So that was proposed yesterday as well. We welcome in Jared Smith, Niko Moreno joining us in about 10 minutes. What is on your mind this morning? First and foremost, how are you?
Recovering slowly, but recovering.
Which is always a plus.
Yeah, it's always a plus, man. I saw Joey Barton was being stupid. I assume Joey Barton had something to push, and so he just decided that he would say something controversial because in some people's minds, any press is good press. Also, I'm very proud of him for learning the word eunuch. I'm sure he spent many an hour looking over the thesaurus and asking multiple people on the street how to pronounce that word correctly.
Yes.
And he's very proud of himself for it. And I think we should all give him a little golf clap for learning big boy words.
Yeah, especially words that may not be a whole lot of Scrabble points, but have a whole lot of meaning attached. I went into the idea. We discussed Joey in hour number 1. He was opening kickoff for round 1 of Stupidity down here today, and I mentioned, and I don't know, that there are tremendously talented individuals who comment on the game on a daily basis, and I mentioned Jess by name on purpose, because of what she has been able to build. And we have friends in the business who have built incredible careers for themselves. But because of the Joey Barton shtick, I mentioned Jess in hour number 1 as an individual who has played the game and is now on XMFC, and she gets called to do a lot of TV and has never met a live opportunity that she hasn't turned down to talk about the game, whether it's Charlotte or women or men or what have you. And the word that I used with Joey Barton was Neanderthal, in addition to wanting to try to draw attention to yourself. It's an outdated opinion. And I guess and I mentioned also that since Joey has been fired from being a manager in the lower divisions in England, that he can't comment on being a manager because he's been fired in the past.
We can comment on being a manager. He can just comment on how to do it incorrectly.
Yes, that's true.
Like I said, I'm assuming that Joey has something new coming out that he needs to push and decided to just go get some publicity for it. Look, man, like it is the classic of you do not feed the trolls kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there comes a time when stuff like this happens where I'm like, oh, there appears often to be an angle behind someone just deciding to jump all the way out of their pocket with this stuff, where they just decide to start firing off and then decide to start like answering all of the tweets that are sent back kind of in belittlement.
Mm-hmm.
So I just assume that he has something else going on, that he's trying to either stay in the public eye or he's got something coming up and he wants the name association with it. Whatever floats his boat, I guess. I don't know, man. People pick the weirdest hills to get on, and then is it ever really worth the amount of nonsense that you're going to have to put up with? Probably not, but in his eyes, it might be. It is what it is. That one is more of a metaphorical bus fire, whereas in Brazil they're having literal bus fires.
Yes, I mean, this is what happens when your team gets relegated for the first time in 111 years. Santos relegated in Brazil. I mean, this is like Pele's club, Santos. Yeah, when you hear Santos of Brazil, first, and my T-shirts prove it, first guy that you think of is Pele. First time in 111 years that they've been relegated. And so outside the stadium, and Niko Cantor has the video up on his 280 character app, by the way, as does Luis Michel Echegaray. And you got people setting stuff on fire right behind the stadium. I mean, the stadium was an absolute mess, as it seemed like fans were, turning everything upside down. And you're like, seriously? I mean, but yeah, when you're that mad, that's what's going to happen sometimes. And sure enough, literally, Santos relegated for the first time, and they got cars on fire down the block, and the stadium is torn up. And of course, there are those of us, in the news media who are sitting there and they're trying to figure out, okay, how can we get the pictures of this? How can we get the pictures up? And you got firefighters trying to fight it from the top levels of the stadium, trying to douse the car fires that are like 20 feet below. I mean, don't get relegated, I guess, is the lesson.
I mean, that's like the life goal, is don't get relegated. It's kind of like again, metaphorical versus literal car fire. Joey Barton broke the one rule, which is on the Bird app, the app that used to be Bird. There's one rule. Every day there is a main character, and your goal is to not be it. Joey Barton saw that out today. Your goal is to not be relegated, and it seems that they broke that rule.
And
they got that ass relegated.
One of the players' cars was one of the cars that was put on fire. Steven Mendoza's car was burned to the ground.
I mean, he should be thankful he's not in France.
True.
Because like of all of the countries, like people are gonna make their shot. Like people are gonna fire off from the hip at Brazil about this. Hey, at least you're not France.
Yeah,
because that's the ones we should. That's the ones we should be like burying under 8 feet of concrete. Is the way their fans have been acting recently in the domestic leagues in France.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's like they are liable to make the Brazilian fans look like, some of them look like amateurs. Like Brazil going to have to eat some Wheaties and get loose because man, the French have been doing lately is pretty embarrassing. But yeah, it's I guess there's a first time for everything, and again, got that ass relegated.
Don't get your ass relegated.
Don't get your ass relegated.
Where is your phone in relation to your earpiece?
Mine?
Yes.
It is sitting down here while I have a headset plugged into it.
Okay, because I'm hearing the scratchy feedback thing.
Oh, that's me also cleaning my desk off because the child left like Play-Doh all over.
Oh, okay.
She was making something this morning and she left Play-Doh on my work desk, and now I'm trying to clean it off so it doesn't dry and stick there.
Ew.
The heat death of the universe.
Ew.
Send the kid to your house.
Yeah, really? I mean, tonight, to Ricky's point, we do have the Copa America draw tonight at 7:30. And it should be very, very interesting about what goes down tonight. I have right now. Here's how it lays out: Pot 1, Argentina, Mexico, U.S., and Brazil. Pot 2, Uruguay, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Pot 3, Chile, Panama, Venezuela, Paraguay. Pot 4, Jamaica, Bolivia, and the 2 winners from Jerry World. That's what you're staring at. And we were looking, and the Pot 1 guys, they all go to different places. Argentina goes in one group, Mexico goes in a group, U.S. goes in a group, Brazil goes in a group. Then the fun begins. Trying to figure out who is going to be put in all of these locations. Once again, tonight at 7:30. It's on FS1, and who knows? I might even have something. After the fact that we'll post in the morning. But once again, reminder: tomorrow morning is going to be flipped. Prem and Proper gets released in the morning, and SDH is in the PM because I have to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to prepare for high school football championships. Programming next week, outside of Monday, it's going to be morning update with Jason, Drew, Maddie et al. Afternoon update with Jason, Drew, Maddie et al. Because we're in the transfer window and the trade window and free agency and waivers and all that kind of stuff for Major League Soccer. Morning show Monday might be a power hour, and then an afternoon update. So then all week long, it's going to be morning update, afternoon update as we go through and navigate Major League Soccer's trade windows and such. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are the championships. You'll see what I look like without makeup, but with makeup and a suit on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Hey, man, that's the only reason I watch the state championships every year.
To see me wearing makeup and a suit?
Yep.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes. Ricky wants to know if there are any parameters to how many CONCACAF teams can be in a group. I have yet to hear.
Not a clue, man.
Yeah, and just don't be surprised if it looks a little odd by the time the night's over. And so you got so when Niko comes on, we will discuss Copa America in addition to everything else, and we might address Copa America first since that's what we're talking about right now. But Pot 1, Argentina, Mexico, U.S., Brazil, they go into different groups. Then we got to talk about who to avoid and who you want in your bracket. Who do you want in your group? If you do, if who do you want? That's the biggest thing here. But the standings when it comes to CONMEBOL qualifying right now. Let me dig that up real quick so I can sit there and go. Okay, so here's what we're staring at: qualifier standings. Okay. I love how FIFA says they think it's over. It's not over. All right. So Argentina, obviously top of the group. Uruguay and Colombia are the only other two teams that are in double digits right now in points. So Uruguay and Colombia, they are both in pot 2. So it's a good chance. It's a good chance that you get one of those in your group. We'll kind of walk through this. 50% chance, Ricky says 50% chance we get U.S. versus Joseph or U.S. versus Miggy at the Benz on the 27th.
Yeah, and both of those are just going to be burned down the house kind of nights. If you
well,
get
so is and so is that.
And so is the first one. Depending on who Argentina plays, it could get stupid real fast.
Oh my God! So right now you're probably going to get the Uruguay or Colombia in your group, and you want to make sure that you navigate that one. Then Venezuela, Ecuador, Brazil. Do you want Brazil right now? I'd sit there and go,
I don't ever really want Brazil, to be fair.
But they've just not been good.
I know, but I don't really want them. You don't want to be their get-right game.
No, that's true. But thankfully, Brazil is in a different pot.
People wanted Alabama after the Texas game. People were fine with it. Oh man, maybe this Alabama can be knocked around a little bit. Then I subscribe to the theory at this point, if we're going to put on our tinfoil hats.
Sure.
That Saban started what's his face against USF, and to drive the point home of hey, y'all want to see what the other side looks like? I'm going to start this cat, and then the next week I'm going to go back and start Jalen Milroe, and y'all won't know why I started Jalen Milroe.
Exactly.
No, Saban's going to win a national title again, and darkness will befall the land for 1,000 years.
As long as he doesn't have to use a kicker. Bottom 4 teams right now in CONMEBOL qualifiers: Paraguay, Chile, Bolivia, Peru. So Paraguay, Chile, they're both in pot 3. Peru is in pot 2. That's who you want. Out of pot 2, that's who you want. You want Peru as a part of your discussion. And because they haven't won in the first 6 matches in CONMEBOL qualifying, they're 0-2-4. They've only scored 1 goal. Bolivia has given up a lot. They've scored 4, but they've given up 14. So Paraguay, Chile, Bolivia, Peru is what you're staring at for those bottom 4. Paraguay, Chile, pot 3. Peru is in pot 2, so you've got a little bit of separation. And then Bolivia is in pot 4. Jamaica's in pot 4. I want nothing to do with Jamaica, considering that Andre played in net. I don't want that.
No, you don't really want anything to do with them. Give me the inevitable Jamaica-Mexico game where everyone just gets completely sideways. Because that one's always drunk.
Yes. So if you end up with Jamaica, Mexico in the same group, like in that group 2, that'd be fun. That'd be absolutely sexy. So I'm looking forward to what's going on. And since it is the last half hour of the show on a Thursday, that means that we waste no time. Bringing Niko Moreno from Seattle. Niko, what is up, my friend?
What's going on, John? Jared, of course, family of SDH. Happy to be here with you guys. Excited for the big final in MLS. Excited to talk to y'all. So let's get it going.
Okay, well, we were talking before, and I was kind of filibustering a little bit. I admit I was stalling. Copa America draw is tonight at 7:30 Eastern. And I know we're going to talk about, MLS Cup and all that kind of stuff, but Copa America draw is tonight. And right now, the way things are laid out, you got your pot 1. Everybody sets aside Argentina, Mexico, U.S., and Brazil. Pot 2, Uruguay, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. Pot 3, Chile, Panama, Venezuela, Paraguay. Pot 4, Jamaica, Bolivia, and the 2 winners at Jerry World coming up in March. If you are any of those dudes in pot 1, who do you want in your group and who do you want to avoid?
Remind me the teams for pot 1.
Pot 1, Argentina, Mexico, U.S., Brazil. They get to go into their groups. That's your pot 1. So that Argentina, Mexico, U.S., and Brazil. That's pot 1. They're the dudes. Right. They're in their groups. They're individual spots. Uruguay, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru is pot 2. Pot 3, Chile, Panama, Venezuela, Paraguay. Pot 4, Jamaica, who Jarrett and I are like, I don't want to touch them with Andre Blake in net. Jamaica, Bolivia, and the 2 playoff winners in Dallas in March. If I'm setting up a group, and we'll probably end up talking about this later in like next week and stuff, but who do you want in your group and who do you not?
Oh, well, I mean, that's simple. I think that there's some of the South American teams that have not just issues now, but they've had issues consistently. I think Bolivia, I think Venezuela's been struggling as well. I think that you don't want to have anything to do with Uruguay. You don't want anything to do with Argentina. I really don't think you want to deal with the host either. I mean, that's a one that you want to avoid in general senses. I think Colombia has a very good team right now. I think Brazil, like I mentioned a couple of shows ago when we went over the qualifiers at the time, I think that they're not as strong as they usually are. I think that they're in the middle of a broken process. So I think that's a team that you could upset, so you don't have to necessarily look away from them. I'm with you guys on Jamaica. I think Jamaica athletically, I think Jamaica in terms of what they've been doing lately, having a core group together, they're going to be a challenging team no matter what. I think Panama on the very low-key side are starting to build something down there, and they're going to have a lot of support here in the States. So I guess that's some of the teams that you want to stay away from. And then, again, even Mexico, with all the support that they have, I think they're going to really struggle to get some traction. There's been a ton of bad press recently on Mexico. They've struggled in games. They've struggled outside of games. There's a whole bunch of discussion about who should be called up, and is Raul Jimenez finally finding some form because he had a couple of goals this weekend. So I think that there's such a kind of convoluted team at the moment that they're going to struggle as well. So it's going to be a very interesting one in terms of Copa America here, because you'll see the support from each specific nation here in the States, but there are some struggling teams within CONCACAF that might be a surprise to either get out early or just not be able to really find their way past even the first round.
No doubt about it. Jarrett, MLS conversation. Kick it.
All right. Last time we talked, we all agreed that Houston would beat LAFC, and we were all wrong. And I am still reeling from Benny Ball not finishing the drill for this season. Alas, here we sit with Columbus, who came back, and I had said earlier this week that Cincinnati pulled a Minnesota choking act that they did at your house up in Seattle a couple years ago, where they had it and then they let it go. But now we got Columbus and we have LAFC. What are your thoughts on this Cup final?
I love it. I think that they've both earned it. I think that you have two of the more impressive teams throughout the playoffs for various reasons. And look, I'm not a pragmatic style of soccer type, but I have learned to respect it a little bit. So the fact that LAFC has kind of reinvented themselves throughout this playoffs have been very interested in two parts. One, set pieces that were not very effective offensively, off defensively throughout the regular season. And they've just turned into this elite team when it comes to both of those things, right? It seems like they get either a near shot or a goal just about every time there's a corner kick or a free kick. They've really been able to squeeze the lemon out of that, the juice out of a lemon that wasn't there during the regular season. And then for their style of play, Cherundolo has kind of turned into this team that is just saying, hey, look, we don't need possession of the ball. We're going to play in transition. We're going to be effective. At times, we're going to hit you in the half spaces. At times, we're going to push it out wide. We're going to be careful. We're going to take our moments. So I find it interesting that he was able to just kind of flip the switch on that. And in the last two games against Seattle and against Dynamo, they had no problem just sitting back, playing defensively, giving the opponent the ball, and either allowing them to just pass it around horizontally or in their own space, or just forcing them to either mid-range shots or just having to just cross the ball into the box, where Cellini and Murillo have been really impressive. So I just think that that's been really, really good in terms of LAFC and how they've kind of changed it. And then Columbus, in a complete clash of that, they've told you what they're going to do from the beginning of the season till now. You know, they're going to be offensive. They're going to punch you in the face. They're never out of any game. They were down 2-0 against Cincinnati, and they kind of felt like they had not just more chances, but more fuel in the tank. Their conditioning, that is one of Wilfred Nancy's, I think, biggest emphasis as being a coach. I've talked to several players that have been with him in his last two teams, and he's like, man, he likes athletes. He wants to make sure that you're running, that, you know, condition is a big part of it. And he paid due against Cincinnati. So the fact that we have two clashing systems, one that's been the same from the beginning of the season till today, and now LAFC playing a more pragmatic and allowing you the ball, is going to be very interesting how that plays out. Love the star component of it as well. Buanga on one side, Cucho and Diego Rossi on the other. Carlos Vela, his last run with LAFC. So there's just so many underlines that I'm just excited about the final.
To me, it almost seems like LAFC is like Rocky and Rocky 2. It's like you're fighting right-handed. It literally is like you're used to Rocky being the
lefty.
That. Rocky's used to being the lefty, and Steve Cherundolo is Mickey, and he's teaching LAFC to fight right-handed. And then in the 15th round, when Mickey yells now, that's when you start going back to fighting left-handed, and you get the knockout and you get the belt over Apollo Creed. I mean, it's just at times it's unwatchable. But when it's almost Red Bulls like, where they have 30% possession against Houston, but once again, if you get the turnover and you're clinical and you're up, it doesn't matter what the possession numbers are. You've got a lead and the other team's got to chase, and you can just lock it down and sit there and go, okay, look, we got a lead. We don't need the ball anymore. Go for it and try to work it through. And that's what we're seeing, I think, from LAFC right now.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if Jared has a thought on it, but I'm totally with you. And they've been able to kind of turn a team that has specific players to do certain things into creating or adding now new dimensions to their game. I mean, Hollingsted is a guy that I wouldn't call a defensive fullback, and yet he's done very well just sitting back, allowing at times Ilie to kind of come in between those two center backs whenever Palacios is out. And then whenever Hollingsted's going to push out, then Palacios stayed. And if you follow Palacios' career, he's another guy who's number one forte and attribute is his ability on the ball and pushing forward. And now he's just physical. Well, he's not being physical, but his stance defensively, his technique, his ability to push the one-on-one outside of his lines. I mean, he's just been very good. And I would say that Chiellini as well throughout this time in MLS, where constantly maybe at times he was exposed for his lack of speed and things like that. Across this playoffs, they've had him so deep, always with numbers behind the ball, that he's just looked great. He's just been able to sit back in that box and just dominate with his experience, his location on the ball, the way he kind of leads that back line. So because of that, man, I think it's impressive.
No, I agree with you. And it's funny because you talk about Chiellini.
Jared hit the magic button. Here he comes. Hang on.
Yeah, that's all right. No, I mean, oh, there you go. Here we go.
Hey, no, I wondered if Chiellini was going to be that target point when they played Seattle, when they came up to y'all's house. In that, if you could get, if Brian Smetzer, being as good as he is at putting that team in a position to be successful, if you were going to get situations where you were going to ask Chiellini to try and keep with Jordan Morris, but they've done such a good job of protecting him, and also putting him in a position to be successful and not asking him to do too much of the physical work outside of just being a smart, good defender who does so much of his work ahead of time. In the sense, like, we had one of those in Atlanta. We had Michael Parkhurst, who was physically limited compared to other center backs, but he did so much work before the ball was even played with positioning, and getting into shape, that it didn't really matter by the end of it all. And it's very impressive the way Cherundolo's made it work. I don't know how much gas Chiellini has in the tank left
at 39
after this season. And Niko talked about it with Vela as well. Like, man, look, Vela, this isn't 2019 anymore. Vela does not look like 2019 Vela.
No.
But if he can, and this will be one that, we talked about the other day, Darlington Nagbe had a great game against Cincinnati. Darlington Nagbe's starting to get long in the tooth. I don't think he can give you all of those insane games week after week after week anymore, but he can pull it out. Can Carlos Vela give you 60 minutes, give or take, in this cup final as kind of his magnum opus?
Yeah, and look, another interesting thing about all this is that LAFC could very well go back to their regular season form and maybe do it differently against Columbus, because maybe, just maybe, when you have a team as strong offensively as Columbus, maybe you don't give them as much possession, maybe you don't allow them to get into the flow of the game. So I'm still not sure if Cherundolo is just going to come in the final with the exact same tactics. And that's interesting, because I couldn't really say that about LAFC before. And you're right. I mean, with Carlos Vela, and I think Christian Oliveira has gave them something differently, because they've had struggle to really have that freedom of that top three players usually were very free and they would move around, and sometimes Carlos would push out and sometimes Dennis Bouanga would come in, but the right side was just not as good at that ability to just switch. Oliveira has been fantastic. You might not see it in the stats, you might not see it in assists or goals, but his movement, the way he kind of plays off of Vela, the way he plays off of Hollingsted, when he comes forward, I mean, he's just been so good that maybe, just maybe, if LAFC decides, hey, we're not going to play in transition and we're not going to just sit back, maybe things change. Maybe Carlos Vela comes in a little bit later. Maybe in this one, they kind of switch things around, and maybe Mario Gonzalez starts in this one as more of a target 9. So I just don't really know what to expect from LAFC. I know what I'm going to expect from Wilfred Nancy, and that doesn't mean that it's any easier to defend, because they just have been really hard to stop in general senses. So I think that's what's interesting about how these LAFC things will come around. But let's give credit to Wilfred and the way he kind of has installed this confidence in this team, where they're never out of things, where he knows exactly what each one of these players is going to give them. Will Gressel start in this one, or is it Farsi? Farsi's been really, really good in the back and forth, but you saw what Gressel did when he came in against Cincinnati, simply because of the services into the box, his ability to create opportunities. I want to say when he came on, in the few touches he had in that time, he might have created 5 opportunities of clear chances. So he just was so good on the ball that I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen on that side. But they're going to be the exact same team, and that's because of Wilfred Nancy, right? Christian Ramirez is a guy that you can call off the bench, and he's going to give you absolutely everything. He's going to push. He's going to occupy the defenders. He's going to give Cucho a lot more space. He's going to allow Matan to do other things. So it's just a really, really good final in terms of different tactics, different schemes. But right now, I couldn't tell you how LAFC is going to set up against this very good Columbus squad.
Well, and I think to your point, I'm digging up the numbers courtesy of our friends at SofaScore, looking up Julian's numbers when he came into the match, and you're like, okay, what am I staring at here? Well, it'd be nice if Cincinnati could tell me what's going on with Columbus. That'd be great. Columbus subs. This is what happens with live radio and things don't behave.
Now, that's all right, but I mean, if I give you some time to go ahead and do that,
55 minutes. Yeah, I got it. 55 minutes on the board. 41 touches, 19 of 24 passing at 79%. 5 key passes, 3 of 9 on crosses, 0 for 3 on duels. He lost possession 13 times. He was fouled had 1 foul, had 1 clearance, and 2 picks. So that's what you get from Julian Gressel. But I think to your point is if LAFC is Rocky and they come out the way they did in the first Rocky movie, if Rocky comes out the way that he is, slugging away, they're going to be offensive, then to me that means it's Mo Farsi on the right-hand side. Right. If LAFC comes out and it's going to be like they are in Rocky 2 where they're fighting right-handed and they're waiting to the 15th round to come in and fight lefty, then it's Julian because of Julian's defensive deficiency. Say that 10 times fast. Farsi being the better defender, I think, would be up against that LAFC rush that we're used to seeing. If you want to be the better team offensively and try to get points on the board early, then it might be Julian starting, knowing that there's some defensive issues there with Julian. That left-hand side, though, if Julian is on the right-hand side, that left-hand side to me is screaming Denny Bouanga.
Yeah.
If Farsi and Bouanga, I think that benefits Columbus. If it's Gressel on that right-hand side with Bouanga attacking on the left, that is Bouanga and feed him all day long.
100%. And the duels are going to be key in this one, right? Because you can't just ignore a guy like Dennis Bouanga any moment in the game. We saw exactly what he did against Seattle in a couple of moments. Against the Dynamo, I thought it was great the way at times he was a bit of a decoy. He kept Dorsey real deep, which is something you don't really got to see from Houston. And one of the reasons why I thought they were so ineffective in the attacking end, because Coco Carrasquilla, he likes to come inside and leave Dorsey that end. So they didn't have a lot of width, and a lot of the possession that they were able to have was without purpose and was really ineffective for what they were trying to do with the ball. They just don't have that creative player. So in that sense, I think that those matchups with Dennis Bouanga and how that plays out is going to be very important to just look at all around. And in the midfield, right, can this Columbus team with Nagbe, with Adrian Morris has been very good, maybe just not just dictate tempo, but make that 4-3-3, that the way they stand, just become a lot more defensive and force them, even if LAFC decides to play differently and be on the attack, they're going to have to be careful where Nagbe is. They're going to have to be careful with Adrian Morris is, the way they push back and forth. So the duels in this one are going to be very, very interesting.
Jarrett, go for it.
You talk about the duels, man, and how it is. And that's, I think my thing is trying to figure out that Gressel situation or Farsi situation. For me, just how we talked about pragmatism. How pragmatic does Wilfred Nancy want to be? Because I can tell you, having watched him here, as much as Gressel can create, he can also get sucked up the field and leave that gap back there where it would make it, if I'm going to be risk averse, it would make me nervous about getting beat in an almost identical way that Seattle got beat by Boanga.
Yep.
Where you get up the field, we know that Columbus plays so aggressively, and you leave that exact space open for LAFC, and they showed you they really only need one chance. I think that would be my fear, but at the same time, they're just Columbus plays with such a willingness to just absolutely go for it that I can't sit here and say, he'll be pragmatic. Will he though?
Yeah, no. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, it's hard to call the style necessarily super pragmatic, but is he going to be cautious with that side? Yeah, and I think that he learned a lot from the Cincinnati game and the way they kind of held Barreal, and Bupensa was forced to be pushed farther in those inside channels because I thought Farsi and Moreno did such a good job on that right side. I think their left side with Jabo is a little bit more subjective to getting beat. Can Christian Oliveira be that X factor? I don't know, but I would, if I'm Wilfred, I'd rather have Oliveira beat me than Buanga beat me. So because of that, I think Farsi will start. I was just kind of providing, a little bit of how surprised I was with Gressel. Yeah. And another reason why I don't think he's going to sit Farsi is because he had a pretty bad game. And I don't think you want to take away his confidence completely by saying, hey, you had one bad game this playoff run, and I'm going to take you out, and I'm going to just sit you. So because of that, I also think he's going to go with Farsi.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Farsi and Moreno on the right-hand side, because if you leave Buanga to just go up against Moreno, no doubt Moreno's had a great postseason, but you need that support there with Farsi and Moreno going up whatever's coming down the left-hand side. I do want to get in a Seattle question before we go, so let's get in your prediction. What do you think is going to happen here? Because folks want to know. Abby wants to know who you picking.
I'm thinking Columbus, man. I've been really high on them all season long. I did have them in my bracket losing to Houston because I thought it was going to be this huge upset thing that would happen. But when I look at this game and I see what both teams have done, regardless of how impressed I've been with LAFC and their ability to mold and attack and approach games in different ways, I just got to go with the offensive power and the consistency of Columbus. I think they've had a really tough road to get here. Playing at Cincinnati is difficult. Playing against Atlanta in that series was really, really hard. You have a lot of those concepts that you're going to have ready against LAFC, against both of those teams, because you did have an Atlanta team that pushed you, challenged you, was able to stretch your defense, and you were able to kind of get back into those games and make some adjustments. If you're Wilfred Dancy, you have a really deep bench because of your health, so you know exactly what you're getting, and you got game changers off of your bench. You got guys that could come in and lock down a squad. Darley Tegnagby in that midfield, for me, has more experience than any of the midfielders for LAFC. And I think that's going to be a big, big deal. He's a winner. He's been there, done that. I think Aiden Morris came off really upset when he got switched out for Gressel in that last game. I think he's going to come in with a little chip on his shoulder to just be even better than he has been. So with all that, and despite LAFC and their fantastic, run, I think that Columbus, where they've been really, really good all season long, they're going to take this one. I'm going to go with I wouldn't call it high scoring, but I think it's going to be a multiple goal game. But I have Columbus winning at least putting 3 on the board. So 3-1, 3-2. I think Columbus wins it.
Wow. Okay. So Jarrett, right now the Christmas side dishes have through plus 117. 90-minute draws a plus 245, and LAFC is a plus 227. They've been pretty much in that margin of error. They haven't moved a whole lot. Those are your numbers.
Here's the thing, though, man. I'm right there with Niko, and 3-2 sounds right.
Okay.
And I could see Columbus doing what they did to Cincinnati in an extent, not to the same, not like the exact same script. But if you told me that LAFC got a lead in this game and then they let the mask slip for just a minute, we've seen how Columbus can play. Columbus can just start putting, they don't just hit you. They hit you with combos. And they hit you with combos over a 6-7 minute span, where in a similar way, funny enough, to what like the 2019-2020 LAFC teams did to people, where they would just, the game would be flowing, and then all of a sudden it'd be pop, 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 3 and 10 minutes, where it was just an avalanche. If you told me it was like 1-0 LAFC and then Columbus just smacked them 3 times in 15 minutes to make it 3-1, and then you got one late to make it 3-2, I would buy that script for $1.
Okay, so right now our Christmas side dishes have 4.5 at a plus 500, Niko.
Ooh. 4.5. That a half is where it breaks.
Yeah, that is the Rubicon.
The half was it 3.5?
Plus 225 in the composite.
That's still okay. That's safer money. But the 4.5 is tempting, though. I'm not gonna lie to you. But yeah, that's a lot of goals. I do have like I said, I have a gut feeling, and I'm none of this fantastic analyst like you see on MLS, but I have a feeling that LAFC is going to come into this game playing a lot more open, and is gonna, I don't want to say they're going to go shot for shot against Columbus, but they're going to try to force them to defend. And because Columbus does have a little bit of holes in that 3-man back line, and they had some issues with some set pieces, I think that this game is going to have multiple goals. So I don't know, man. I'll stick with the 3.5. I really will. But that 4.5 is tempting.
All right, so
you should, because like last year's game was 3-3 before it went to extra time. The last game before that to have 5 goals in it was 2004. Was the Kansas City Wiz and DC.
No, that's tough. Yeah, no, 3.5 save money. I go with that.
3.5. All right, so Seattle made their roster decisions, and Stefan Fry was probably one of the fastest decisions where, yes, we are having ongoing discussions, and then we re-sign him. When you look at the roster decisions that are in play now for Seattle, what ran through your mind when they announced?
I thought that they were pretty standard and expected. I thought that Stefan Fry should have been a no-brainer, especially knowing that Nicolas Odero was for sure leaving. You need to have leaders in this team. He's the captain of this squad. Nicolas Odero, when he decided to give back that captain band, he could think of no one better than Stefan Fry to take that honor. He's been reliable. He's coming from a fantastic season with 14 shutouts, and as always, beyond his ability to stop goals is the leadership aspect, the way he holds his players accountable. I just thought it was a no-brainer. So I was happy that he got a 2-year deal. He's probably going to retire here in Seattle. That means that, and you saw it with the roster moves, that obviously Cleveland, who's I think a really good goalkeeper, he's probably going to go elsewhere, a lot like Tyler Miller did at some point for the Seattle Sounders. There's some really good and potential behind Stefan Fry that you might not know about. Jacob Castro, he's a guy that they've been kind of working with, who I like a lot. He seems to be a really good shot stopper. So I think they're really going to build off of those other guys behind Stefan Fry. So it was good to have a guy like that, give you some continuity and some leadership. I was surprised with only the fact that Dylan Tevez was picked up his option and then Doubler wasn't. The Doubler was a guy that had a lot of potential. He's, had some rough road with injuries, but I thought he was really, really good. That was probably my only surprise. Javier Arreaga getting his contract picked up. You heard me say it here. That's going to be a obviously easy decision. That doesn't mean he's going to stay. I think that they will trade him. There is interest within MLS. And that's about it. I think everybody else, you kind of already knew what was going to happen. Albert Rusnak, a lot of people here in Seattle have mixed feelings about it. The main point of them saying, hey, is Albert really worth the DP spot? And I'm going to say, yeah, look, Albert gives you a lot of versatility. He hasn't been fantastic and extraordinary. And I know that when people think DP, they think Dennis Wanga and Thiago Almada and Mokhtar and all of these players that are just in a different type of level. But a DP spot can also be a guy that's going to give you a high floor. And I think that's what he does. I'm not sure if Seattle's going to retain this 4-2-3-1 next season. There are, I think, a lot of possibilities that system changes. And having a guy like Albert that can just play more as an 8 and more of a CM than a cam is good. I don't know if you guys heard, but Pedro de la Vega is a guy that Seattle's getting close to signing. Is a guy that
wait a second. I thought that the number 10s at Lanús were always supposed to come to Atlanta, man. What is this?
I guess so. I guess not. But this guy, he's not just a 10, right? He can play out wide. I've actually been doing a lot of research on the kid, and I talked to a video analyst from Lanús, and he told me that there's been times where he comes a little bit deeper and can play still out wide. You know, he was thinking in a 4-3-3 type of situation where he'd be a right mid, where he has more time to run on through the ball because he does have very good vision. He does carry it very well. So I think because of having a guy like that, a young DP, having a guy like Albert could give you a lot of options on the system that you're going to run. So that's interesting enough. And that's why I think it's a good decision to keep a guy like Albert for that DP spot. But let's talk about the new kid, 22 years old. I got scooped. I had been teasing it here. I teased it on Sounders Weekly. He was a young midfielder they've had in line for a long time. He's still a Lanús only because he had a knee injury, a ligament tear, 2022. Otherwise, he would have been gone, according to everybody who I've talked to, whether it was in Europe or whether it was in Mexico. There was a lot of interest in this kid. Has a lot of potential. It's a high ceiling. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's going to come in and dominate right away. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's going to be the Nicolas Odero of this era, because I couldn't, right? Nicolas Odero was a guy that was proven, that you knew he was going to come in exactly what he was going to give you. Pedro de la Vega is going to be a guy that you're hoping that he could be everything that everyone sees from him. He's played in Argentina national team. He's played in the U23 with guys like Julian Alvarez and I believe Thiago Almada at some point. So this is a kid that I think has a lot of talent. And Seattle is being ambitious with this sort of signing. He's by far the best prospect offensively that they've had. Signing from out broad. So it's interesting. And he goes along the lines of all the decisions that have happened here in Seattle.
All right. So what's going on at Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports, my friend?
All right. Soccer Bar is going to be here in about 40 minutes. We're going to talk MLS. We're going to hear from Cherundolo. LAFC is already at the scene of the events in Columbus. So we got some word from a few protagonists down there. We're going to talk a little bit about some of this news, some of these transactions. So go ahead and check it out. And in Pulso Sports, we're going to have an end of the season kind of roundtable here next week. So check that out. It's going to be interesting. We're going to, of course, cover as much as we can of the MLS finals. And that's what you got.
All right. As always, it's great to have Niko here on Thursday. Next Thursday, we won't be live. Jason might be reaching out to you because I am in transit to Washington, D.C., so we're going to be covering things like a morning update and an afternoon update. So just keep your antennas up for a morning update or an afternoon update since we're in that window. So I will be on a plane. So we're doing things differently next week with morning updates and afternoon updates. Be safe, my friend. I will see you in a couple of weeks, and we will talk about all the things, Copa America, MLS Cup, all that, but you'll get to talk to Jason first. Thanks for hanging out with us again on a Thursday, my friend.
All righty, man. Appreciate you guys.
All right, that is Niko Moreno. He's got to get ready for another show. So his Thursdays are busy, man. It's like he comes on here, he gets up, he's on his second cup of coffee. He's doing his stuff, and he's ready to go. Morning, Harry. Great to have you hanging out with us in Texas. We'll wrap up with what's going on, what to watch, where to watch it, and how to watch. So here we go with what to watch and where to watch it. Busy day. Tottenham and West Ham at 3:15. We'll get into juice boxes in a sec. That's on USA. Pumas and Tigres, semifinals, 9:30 on 2 to NA. ESPN Plus has the Belgian Cup, the Eredivisie, doubleheader at 12:40 and 3 o'clock. 4 matchups in the Copa del Rey, 1 at 1, 3 at 3 o'clock. On NCAA.com, it is the Division II semifinals. Franklin Pierce and Lewis at 5. Florida Tech, the Panthers, making their way in from the Sun Conference, taking on CSU Pueblo at 8. On the women's side, it is the choice. Wow, they're chasing a double at Florida Tech. We'll have to follow along with that. The Panthers at Florida Tech taking on Point Loma. That is now underway, and that is early first half. And Adelphi and Washburn out of Kansas is at 2 o'clock. So same venue, 11-2 are your women's semifinals. 5 and 8 are your men's semis in Division II. Peacock has Everton and Newcastle at 2:30. So let's get you into juice boxes really quickly so we can all get out of here. And reminder, once again, tomorrow it is Prem and Proper in the morning. SDH will be live in the afternoon. I don't know when yet. Probably middle of the afternoon, so that way we can get everything squared away from what happened in Europe, get you previewed, and get everything rocking and rolling for what's going on for your weekend. So once again, Prem and Proper out tomorrow morning, and then live SDH PM in the afternoon sometime because I have to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to get ready for the high school football championships. Juice boxes for Everton and Newcastle. Newcastle is a road favorite, even with all the injuries, at a plus 139. Draws at a plus 250. Everton is north of plus 200 at a 204 in the composite. Spurs a minus 133 with visiting West Ham. 90-minute draws a plus 328. And West Ham is a plus 345. Wow. Abby is really cooking tomorrow. She says, look at this. Cooking all day. 10 pounds of, is it 10 pounds or 10 plates of potato latkes? See, now that, man, that's now I'm hunkering for Polish food too. 10 pounds. Thank you. 10 pounds of potato latkes. So Abby's going to be cooking all day. How do you know when it's 10 pounds? Just curious. Anyway, potato latkes cooking tomorrow for Abby. So once again, Prem and Proper on tape in the morning, SDH PM to get you through the afternoon and get you moving toward the weekend. So that's where we are. So once again, thanks as always. Oh, you buy 10 pounds of potatoes. There you go. That makes sense. Thanks to all of you guys for hanging out with us this morning. We had a lot of news we had to get through. And we had Niko on at 10:30. It was great to have Jared on as well to break through everything and tell Joey Barton he's an idiot. And Luis Rubiales, you're an idiot too, allegedly. But yeah, Joey Barton is an idiot. So when you have idiots saying things in public fora, they need to be called out. And as much as you don't want to give them the time of day, you kind of need to remind us that we have to be vigilant in those kinds of situations. So we got folks who do fantastic work in this business, and we have to continually remind everyone that stupid people, yes, stupid people are allowed to have forums too, but they still need to be called out for being stupid. So that was the Joey Barton excursion that we had this morning in hour number 1. You can go back and listen. Thanks to everybody who was watching on the YouTube, on the Twitch, and on the 200 Indie Character app. Obviously, the audio version will be out short order. You can listen to this, and we'll pull all the segments, and we'll be back at it again on tape to start things off tomorrow. SDH PM on the live side of things. So since it is the end of the show, mucha platiel, play it safe, everybody. We'll catch up with you in various forms tomorrow. That means I get to do this, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Have a thankful Thursday. I agree, Abby. We'll see you later.